I stood outside the restaurant with 5 perfectly wrapped boxes in my trunk. Inside, they were laughing. My mother, my sister, the kids I used to spoil like my own. I pressed my fingers to the cold window and watched my niece blow out the candles on a cake I didn't buy, at a party I wasn't invited to. Last year, I organised the whole thing. This year, I wasn't even on the guest list. I smiled anyway, because I had a plan. I didn't come to crash the party. I didn't even want revenge. I just wanted them to know I was done begging to be seen. So I turned away and walked back to my car, where the gifts were still untouched. Not because I forgot, but because I finally remembered something more important. You don't have to keep giving to prove you deserve love. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty about walking away. She used to call me every week, sometimes just to say she liked the scarf I sent, sometimes to ask if I'd be around for Sunday dinner. Then, a skipped call, a delayed reply, a missed thank you. It was slow, not cruel, just quiet. And somehow, that hurt more. I first noticed it on Christmas. Everyone else's gifts were opened with squeals and hugs. Mine sat in the corner, unopened, until someone finally said, "Oh, that's from her," like an afterthought. I laughed it off, made a joke, but I knew. The gap had begun to grow. My sister started calling our mom more often. Without looping me in, the group chat became a duo. Photos I wasn't in, plans I didn't hear about, and when I showed up to Jace's piano recital, my sister blinked in surprise. "Oh, you came?" Like I wasn't supposed to, like I wasn't welcome. I told myself I was imagining it, that it was stress, schedules, but deep down, I knew what it really was. I was being gently, quietly, replaced. And the worst part, no one said a word, because saying it would make it real. I sent a birthday card with glitter inside. My niece posted a picture of someone else's gift, a ceramic unicorn, the kind I used to buy her, except this one came from their new aunt. She called her that in the caption. Aunt Melanie. I wasn't tagged. I wasn't even mentioned. I reread it 3 times. Not out of jealousy, but out of grief. Somewhere between family dinners and forgotten calls, they replaced me, and no one thought I'd notice. I tried harder, dropped off care packages, bought Jace that exact hoodie he once circled in a catalogue. No reaction, no thank you, not even a text. When I called to ask if he got it, my sister just said, "Oh yeah, we left it at Mum's. He's already got one." It landed like a slap. They used to light up when I walked in. Now they barely looked up. And the most painful part, it wasn't done out of cruelty. It was done out of comfort. They had simply moved on. Without me. I watched from the edges. Every gathering I wasn't told about. Every post that felt like a party I was too awkward to attend. I wasn't disowned, just unneeded, which, in some ways, hurts even more. My hands were full. A tray of cupcakes, a wrapped book, and the smallest pair of glittery shoes I knew my niece had been begging for. I showed up early, because that's what family does. At least, that's what I believed. But when the door opened, my sister blinked, paused, then said, "Oh, I thought you weren't coming." She didn't move aside. She didn't call the kids. She didn't even smile. Inside, I could already hear music, laughter. The party had started, without me. I looked past her shoulder and saw balloons with Aunt Melanie written in gold. A photo booth banner with Melanie and the kids, like she was part of the family. And I was just some neighbour who brought snacks. My sister finally muttered, "Well, we don't really have room at the table, but you can stay for cake if you want." Something inside me cracked. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet shift, like a door slowly closing. I stepped back, handed her the cupcakes, kept the shoes and the book. No, it's fine, I said. I shouldn't have come uninvited. I turned around, walked to my car, and locked the gifts in the trunk. I sat there for a while, didn't cry, didn't rage, just stared at the dashboard, trying to remember the last time I felt like I belonged, and I couldn't. That was the last time I ever showed up without being asked, the last time I let silence pass for love. The first morning, I made coffee in silence. No laughter from the kids, no texts from my sister asking for help, just me and the echo of a kitchen that hadn't been used in days. I opened my laptop and stared at the half-finished logo I'd been designing for weeks. It wasn't perfect, but I hit publish, posted it to a freelance board with a caption that felt too small for how big this moment was, taking new clients. No one replied the first day, or the second, but on the third, a woman named Carla messaged. She needed a logo for her bakery, didn't have much to pay, didn't know what she wanted. But she said, "You sound like someone who listens." I did. We spoke for an hour. She told me about her cinnamon rolls and the name her grandma gave the shop. I sketched while she talked. When I sent her the final version, she cried. Not because it was beautiful, but because she felt seen. That night, I ate toast for dinner. The fridge was nearly empty. I hadn't noticed until then. But I also didn't care, because for the first time in months, I felt useful. The next day, I fixed the missing C in my website header, added testimonials, took a walk outside, even though it was raining. By the end of the week, I had 2 clients and a spreadsheet with more colour than my niece's birthday party ever had. I didn't tell anyone. Not my mum, not my sister, not even the kids, because this time it was mine. The first ping came at 7:42 a.m. Logos up. Already got compliments, with 2 heart emojis and a $20 tip. It wasn't much, but it felt like applause in a room that used to be silent. I took a photo of my desk, still cluttered, coffee stain on the mousepad, post-it notes curling at the corners, and set it as my phone background, not because it looked good, but because it meant I'd built something right there, in that mess. By the end of the week, I had a mini queue, 3 real clients, 1 repeat order. I bought myself a used wireless mouse, splurged on a scented candle, and gave myself permission to not be available for every family call. That's when the message came. Ryan, my cousin's old roommate, he used to help with tech stuff at reunions. "Hey, are you the one behind Carla's logo? It looks amazing," I replied with a simple yes, and didn't overthink it. He messaged again. "I might have a project, a startup, nothing fancy yet, but we need someone who gets it." 2 days later, we were on a video call, and somewhere between logo sketches and sharing horror stories about printers, he said, "You're like a quiet boss. You get stuff done. No drama. Just clarity." I laughed, but it stayed with me. Boss. No one had called me that before, not even jokingly. I looked in the mirror that night. Same pajamas, same under-eye shadows, but something had shifted. Not in my appearance, in my posture. I stood a little straighter, opened a notebook, wrote down, "Maybe I am." I didn't know when it happened, but one morning I woke up and didn't dread the sound of my own phone. There were emails, deadlines, clients asking for updates, but none from my sister, none asking me to babysit or chip in for a last-minute birthday gift. Just work and, strangely, peace. I rearranged the apartment, moved my desk by the window, hung a cheap whiteboard on the only clean wall. It stayed blank for a week. Then, one evening, I wrote, "Don't shrink for comfort," and underlined it twice. That night, I got a call from Mum. She didn't ask how I was, didn't ask if I was eating, just said, Your cousin's baby shower is next month. I told them you'd help with decorations. I paused, breathed in, and said, no, not angrily, not dramatically, just clearly. She didn't reply. There was a click. Call ended. I stared at the wall, at the sentence I'd written. It didn't feel brave. It felt overdue. Ryan texted later that week. Let me know if you ever want to scale. You're building something real here, I replied. I'm not ready yet, but I will be. Because deep down, I knew this version of me, the one who stood up softly, the one who worked through doubt without applause. She was just getting started, and maybe she didn't need validation to be real. A soft chime, 3:07 a.m., one new email, subject, upcoming family dinner, RSVP by Friday, no hi, no hope you're well, just a forwarded invitation from my sister. I blinked at the screen. It glowed in the dark like something sterile. A hospital form, a receipt. Attached was a digital card, gold script, a photo of our parents' backyard, twinkling lights strung across the same tree we used to climb as kids. No mention of me, except for the guest list. A full line of names, plus ones, children, titles. Next to mine, Avery, freelance designer. The question mark hit harder than any insult. I hadn't been a question in a long time. Not to my clients, not to Ryan, not to myself, but to them. Still unsure, still temporary. I read the line again, and then again, just to make sure I wasn't misreading it. I wasn't. That morning, I skipped my routine. No email replies, no stretching. I sat at the desk and stared at the photo on the card. The lights, the tree, the shadows of chairs already arranged in a circle I hadn't been asked to sit in. But I had a choice. For once, it felt like I had a real one. I pulled the old red dress from the back of my closet. The tag was still on. I had bought it last winter, hoping for an event that never came. I held it up in front of the mirror, not to try it on, just to ask it a question. Would you go? Would you sit in that backyard, surrounded by people who cheered when you were convenient and vanished when you weren't? I laid it on the bed, carefully, like it might answer. Ryan came over later that day, brought lunch. Didn't ask about the email, but I knew he knew. He always knows. Instead, he said, "You've been quiet today." I nodded, thinking. He didn't press, just sat across from me, opened his laptop, and typed away, like we used to when we shared a desk before I had a real office. At one point, he looked up and said, "If you go for you, not for them." That stuck with me, not because it was profound, but because it was kind. That night, I sat with the invitation again, opened the email, hovered over the RSVP link. My cursor didn't shake. My hand didn't hesitate. I clicked yes, then opened a new browser tab, searched the restaurant's layout. There was a table, the one closest to the private room they'd booked. Still available, I reserved it, under my name, 2 seats. I didn't pack much, not this time, just the dress, red, folded gently into a garment bag with tissue paper between each layer. Like it was fragile, like I was. A pair of heels I hadn't worn in a year, still clean, still waiting. I wrote Ryan's name next to mine on the reservation. He didn't ask why, but when I told him the date, he cleared his calendar. No questions, just, "Do I wear a tie?" I smiled. "Only if it's ironic." We picked a table closest to theirs. Not in the middle, not too far. Just close enough to be seen but not claimed. I ordered one of those little personalised cards from an online shop. The kind people use for weddings. It said, "Reserved, Avery and guest," and beneath it, in smaller print, "Better late than never." Was it petty? Maybe, but it felt precise. I called the restaurant, requested that our table get served 10 minutes before theirs, asked if they had creme brulee. They did. I booked the dress for steaming, Got my nails done, dark burgundy, almost black under certain light. The morning of, I opened my closet one more time, stared at the shelf above the hangers. That's where I kept the teddy bear from my first niece. The one who used to call me Aunt Superhero before she stopped calling at all. I didn't take it down, but I looked long enough to remember. Then I zipped the bag, slipped on my shoes, and whispered to the mirror, "Be calm, be kind, be undeniable." The door opened before I was ready. Light spilled from inside, the warm kind, too golden to be real. It hit the polished floors, bounced off the glass, and landed right at my feet. I hesitated, not because I was scared, but because I didn't want to look unsure. Ryan stepped beside me, didn't touch my arm, didn't speak, just stood, tall, steady. I took the first step. The heel tapped once, then again. It echoed louder than I expected. The maitre d' looked up, smiled too brightly, gestured toward our table like we were just another reservation. But we weren't. We passed them on the way in, the big table, family style. Laughter floated around it like fog. Vivian glanced up, eyes wide, then narrowing. My mother blinked twice. She was wearing the same shade of lipstick she wore at my graduation. But she didn't smile this time. My father didn't look at me at all. Just shifted in his seat like something under him had turned sharp. We kept walking, each step deliberate, measured, not rushed. When we reached our table, Ryan pulled my chair out. I sat, placed my clutch beside the plate, smoothed the napkin across my lap. The card was already there. Reserved. Avery and guest. Ryan looked across the room, then leaned in and whispered. Half of them just choked on their wine. I didn't laugh, but I wanted to. Instead, I asked, "Is it too much?" He shook his head. "No, it's just enough." I turned back to the table, lifted the menu, pretended to read, but my eyes scanned the room instead, one by one. Faces I used to know, now rearranged, older, colder, or maybe just clearer. Then a server approached. "Would you like to start with drinks?" Ryan answered, but I didn't hear. Because across the room, Vivian leaned toward my mother and whispered something. My mother looked at me for just a second, then looked away. Someone dropped a fork. It hit the floor with a sharp clink that no one dared acknowledge. A waiter picked it up like nothing happened, but everything had. The table across the room, the family table, tried to continue. Plates clinked, glasses lifted, voices rose just high enough to sound natural, but not warm. My mother stirred her iced tea for far too long. Vivian kept her eyes glued to her phone, though she wasn't typing a thing. Every now and then someone would glance our way, then glance away faster. Ryan asked me something about the menu. I nodded, didn't really answer. Because I was watching them. How they moved, how they didn't. Uncle Theo tried to crack a joke. Something about dry chicken. Only 3 people laughed. 2 of them forced it. My father finally raised his glass. "To new beginnings," he said. I couldn't tell if it was meant for me or for the woman next to him, the one who used to be my mother, but now looked like someone interviewing for the role. Ryan leaned closer. "They're pretending this is fine," I whispered. "They've had practice." Then it came. A toast from Vivian. She stood, briefly, held her wineglass high. "To family," she said. "To those who show up. A beat, 2 beats. The silence afterward was louder than any cheer. Then the claps came. Scattered, polite, empty. I picked up my water, took a sip, didn't blink. Vivian sat down, never looked at me once. My mother smiled thinly, as if to say, "She's young, ignore her." But I didn't, because Ryan didn't, and because silence has teeth. I was folding my napkin, slowly, line by line, like it mattered. Ryan was halfway through his steak. I wasn't eating, and that's when she stood again. Vivian, different this time. No toast, no performance, just irritation. She walked over, not fast, not slow, stopped at our table. Her voice was low but sharp enough to cut bread. "You really thought this was clever?" she asked, showing up here like some kind of power move. Ryan looked at me, didn't say a word. Vivian kept going. "Did you think it'd make us feel guilty? Because it doesn't." I didn't answer. I just lifted my glass. "Water. No ice. Then why are you shaking?" I asked. It was barely above a whisper, but it landed like thunder. Vivian froze. My father looked over. My mother coughed into her napkin. Ryan exhaled quietly, almost a laugh. Vivian opened her mouth, but nothing came. Then a voice behind her said, "You okay, babe?" A man, mid-30s, tall, unfamiliar. She turned around, startled. I sipped my water again and whispered, "Oops." The man looked at me, then at Vivian. Then, slowly, realization. "You didn't tell me she'd be here," he said. Vivian stammered. And Ryan, he just leaned back and said one word. "Interesting." The whole room had gone quiet. I smiled. Not out of triumph. Not out of revenge. Just closure. I folded the napkin one last time and set it gently on my plate. Ryan looked at me. That's all it took. No nod, no words, just understanding. I stood up, tucked the chair in, careful, quiet, like I didn't want to wake the room, but they were already awake, watching, pretending not to. Vivian sat frozen, her new companion staring as if he'd just discovered a missing piece of someone else's puzzle. My father avoided my eyes. My mother wiped an invisible crumb from her dress. The table that once felt like home was now just furniture. Ryan placed a tip under his water glass, then followed. As we passed the dessert tray, a waiter offered us tiramisu. I smiled. "Maybe next time," I said. Ryan chuckled, not at the joke, at the grace. We reached the door. Ryan opened it for me, held it. I didn't rush, but I didn't look back. Outside, the night was warm, gentle wind, no judgment in the air. He asked quietly, "You okay?" I took a breath, then another, and answered the way I never could before. "Actually, yeah, I think I am." The sidewalk shimmered under the streetlight. My heels echoed softly behind Ryan's steps, but my mind had wandered elsewhere, to a Tuesday afternoon, 2 years ago, rain falling sideways. I was sitting on the kitchen floor, back against the cabinet, holding a small box of toy dinosaurs, forgotten, like me. He was in the next room, laughing at something on his phone. I remember the sound, clearer than the silence. That day, I didn't cry. I just stared at the orange stegosaurus and thought, this isn't the kind of lonely I was warned about. Flash, another one. My birthday, no candles, no call. Just an email from work and a message from Vivian. "Sorry, sis, too busy this year." Rain check. Rain check. Like grief could be postponed. I never responded, and somehow that silence became my entire world. Even Ryan, when we first met, once asked, "Why don't you ever talk about your family?" And I answered, "Because they never asked about me." I didn't say it in anger, just truth. Now, walking under the soft hum of the night, I realized something. It wasn't the betrayals that hurt most. It was how easily they moved on without noticing I was missing. I kept the gifts in the trunk for weeks, wrapped, labelled, perfect handwriting, a silver bunny for Ava, the sketchbook with water-reactive pages for Josh, even a pair of tiny socks with dinosaurs for the baby I'd never met. I thought, maybe I'd drop them off, leave them quietly, no card, no message, just proof that I still remembered even if they didn't. But every day, I'd walk to the car, open the trunk, and close it again. Until tonight. Ryan parked beside the public library, the one with the donation box out front. Gifts for families who needed them but never asked. I opened the trunk. He didn't speak, just stood there, hands in pockets, watching me unwrap myself in silence. I picked up the bag. It crinkled. I walked slowly to the box, lifted the lid, and placed each gift inside. The bunny, the sketchbook, the socks. I stepped back, looked at the box, then whispered, "They deserved better too." Ryan asked, "Was that hard?" I smiled, tears not of grief, but of grace. No, not this time. I used to imagine what it would feel like, just one of them running up to me and saying, "I missed you," 1 hug, 1 second of being seen. But that moment never came. And now, I no longer wait for it. That night, after we left the library, I sat by the window, hot tea in hand. The moon caught the side of Ryan's face as he read across from me. Silence, but not empty. A different kind of quiet than what I knew before. I stared at the faint steam rising from my mug, and for a second, I remembered. Josh was 6 when he gave me his drawing. A rainbow with too many colours, and under it, stick figures holding hands. He said, "This is you. You're the pink one, because pink is strong." I kept it, folded in my wallet. Years later, I opened it once. Creased and faded, but it still made me cry, not because of the drawing, but because I realised he didn't even remember giving it to me. I was holding on to something he'd already let go of, and maybe I had to do the same. Not for them, not for a hug that would never come, but for me. So I set the tea down, walked over to the drawer and took the drawing out one last time. I looked at that pink stick figure, smiled, then folded it back and slipped it into the fire-safe box next to my passport and birth certificate. Not to burn, not to throw away, just to say, you were real. And you mattered, even if only to me. I laughed in the middle of folding laundry, not at a joke, not at a memory, just at how light the towel felt in my hand. It was the first laugh in months that didn't end in guilt. I used to think forgiveness meant saying, "It's okay," letting them off the hook, pretending it didn't happen. But it's not. Forgiveness is when your body stops bracing for an apology that will never come. It's when the weight you didn't know you were carrying is suddenly gone. Not because someone set it down, but because you did. And that night, as I folded the last shirt, I whispered, "Okay." Not to them, not to Ryan, not to the ones who forgot my name when the gift stopped, but to the girl I used to be, the one who kept wrapping love in silence, hoping someone would notice. She tried so hard to stay kind, to stay soft, to stay useful, even when they didn't say thank you, even when they looked through her. I don't owe them peace, but I owe her closure. So I closed the drawer, turned off the light, and for the first time, I didn't feel like the villain in their story. I didn't feel like I had to be the hero either. I was just me. And that was enough. The street outside was quiet, just the faint rustle of wind through the mailbox flag. I stepped onto the porch, shoes soft against the wood, hands full, but not heavy, a stack of wrapped boxes, simple brown paper, no ribbons, no tags, just quiet. I walked across the street to my sister's house. The porch light was off, but the curtains stirred. I placed the boxes down, each one with care. A gift I'd bought, but never given, not because I forgave them, not because they asked, but because they didn't need to hold space in my heart anymore. I straightened up, took a deep breath, and turned to leave. That's when I saw him, Ryan, across the road, near the corner, still in his suit from work, a paper bag in one hand, watching. He didn't wave, didn't smile, just stood there, expression unreadable, eyes following me as I crossed the street. I didn't stop, didn't flinch, just kept walking, each step softer than the last. No music, no words, just the sound of choosing yourself. Behind me, the porch light flicked on. Some gifts aren't meant to be opened. Some love was never meant to be returned. I used to think my silence was weakness, that walking away meant they won. But now I know. Sometimes you leave not because you've given up, but because you finally understand you were never seen to begin with. The porch light turned on, but I didn't turn back. The packages sat there, quietly, like the version of me they never noticed. And that's okay, because not every story needs a happy ending to be complete. Sometimes you are the ending. You are the piece that doesn't need applause. Tell me, have you ever given so much to people who didn't even say thank you, and when you stopped, did anyone notice? Or did you finally realize you were the gift all along?